The creaking house and apple pie dreams. The old house sighed around Grandma Willow like a tired beast. Each creak in the floorboards, each groan of the rafters, was a whispered story of years gone by, stories she knew by heart. Dust motes danced in the afternoon sun filtering through the lace curtains, illuminating the emptiness that had settled in the corners since Joe passed. She shuffled through the kitchen, her worn slippers whispering against the linoleum. It was too quiet. Joe always used to whistle some jaunty tune, off-key and cheerful, as he tinkered in his workshop out back. The silence now was a heavy blanket, smothering the joy they'd built together. Today, she decided, she would bake an apple pie. Joe had loved her apple pie. The memory of his smile, the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he took his first bite, tugged at her heart. She pulled out the worn recipe card, its edges softened with age and use. The faint scent of cinnamon and apples clung to the card, a ghostly perfume of happier times. She remembered Joe teasing her about her meticulous measurements, saying she put more love than ingredients into her pies. He wasn't wrong. The apples, picked from the old tree in the orchard, were fragrant and firm. As she peeled and sliced, her thoughts drifted back to their first autumn in this house. They'd been so young, so full of dreams. They'd planted that apple tree together, its spindly branches reaching for the sky like hopeful arms. Now, it was laden with fruit, a testament to their enduring love. She mixed the flour, butter, and sugar, her hands moving with practiced ease. The cool, crumbly mixture brought a small smile to her face. She remembered Joe's clumsy attempts to help, usually resulting in flour dusting his nose and a fit of laughter from them both. He was no baker, but he was always there, ready with a hug and a kind word. As the pie baked, the aroma of cinnamon and apples filled the house, chasing away some of the lingering emptiness. It was a comforting scent, a familiar embrace. She sat in her rocking chair, watching the pie through the oven window. The crust turned golden brown, the filling bubbled and shimmered. It looked perfect. When it was done, she carefully took it out of the oven, the heat radiating against her face. She placed it on the windowsill to cool, the sweet scent wafting out into the autumn air. She imagined Joe standing beside her, his arm around her shoulders, admiring their handiwork. She poured herself a cup of tea and sat at the kitchen table, the pie sitting before her like a warm, golden sun. She cut a slice, the crust flaking perfectly under the knife. As she lifted the first bite to her lips, a tear escaped her eye and landed on her hand. It tasted of salt and sorrow, mingling with the sweet, comforting flavor of the pie. She closed her eyes, savoring the taste, the memories. It wasn't the same without Joe. Nothing was. But the pie, the simple act of baking, was a connection to him, a reminder of the love they shared. It was a way to keep his memory alive, to fill the empty spaces in her heart, if only for a little while. She ate slowly, deliberately, each bite a small act of defiance against the loneliness. Maybe, just maybe, she could find a way to carry on, to fill her days with purpose, to honor the life they had built together. The house still creaked, the silence still echoed, but the apple pie, baked with love and memories, offered a small glimmer of hope in the gathering dusk. A knock at the door. The scent of cinnamon and baked apples hung heavy in the air, a comforting blanket against the chill seeping in from the old window panes. Grandma Willow hummed a tuneless melody, lost in the rhythm of crimping the pie crust's edge. Each pinch was a small act of defiance against the silence that had become her constant companion. Then, a knock. It wasn't the firm, impatient rap of a salesman, nor the cheerful cadence of a neighbor. This was hesitant, almost apologetic. Willow's hand froze mid-crimp. Her heart, usually a dull ache, gave a nervous flutter. Who could be calling? She hadn't had a visitor, save for Martha from the church, in weeks. Cautiously, she wiped her flour-dusted hands on her apron and shuffled toward the door. The peephole offered a blurry image, a man, his face etched with weariness, his clothes rumpled and faded. He looked gaunt. Hesitation warred with a familiar tug of empathy. She hadn't seen need like that in a long time. Joe would have opened the door without a second thought. Swallowing her apprehension, she unlatched the bolt. The man stood on the porch, his shoulders slumped. He removed a tattered hat, revealing a shock of dark hair streaked with gray. His eyes, though tired, held a spark of something: intelligence? Kindness? It was hard to tell. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said, his voice raspy, like dry leaves skittering across pavement. "I wouldn't trouble you, but I haven't eaten in a couple of days. I was just wondering if you might have anything." He wouldn't meet her gaze, his eyes fixed on the worn wooden planks of the porch. Grandma Willow studied him. He wasn't demanding, wasn't threatening. Just desperately hungry. Her gaze softened. She remembered the gnawing emptiness of those first weeks after Joe passed, a hunger that food couldn't satisfy. I just baked an apple pie," she said, the words tumbling out before she could fully consider them. "It's still warm." His head snapped up, his eyes widening. You would do that?" She nodded, a faint smile touching her lips. Come in, come in. You look like you could use a good sit-down too." He hesitated, his gaze flickering over her small, tidy home. "I don't want to impose." "Nonsense," she said, ushering him inside. "A little company would do me good too." He stepped into the kitchen, his movements cautious, as if afraid of breaking something. The aroma of the pie seemed to envelop him, and she saw a flicker of something akin to peace cross his face. She gestured to the kitchen table. "Have a seat. I'll cut you a slice." As she carefully sliced the pie, she noticed him studying the room, his eyes lingering on the small watercolor paintings that adorned the walls, landscapes Joe had painted years ago. "Those are beautiful," he said softly, his voice barely a whisper. "Did you paint them?" "My husband, Joe, did," she replied, a familiar pang of sadness tightening her chest. "He passed away a few months ago." "I'm sorry for your loss, ma'am," he said, his voice filled with genuine sympathy. She placed a generous slice of pie in front of him, the crust golden brown and flaky. "It's nothing fancy, but it's filling." He picked up a fork, his hand trembling slightly. He took a bite, and his eyes closed for a moment, a look of pure bliss washing over his face. This is the best thing I've ever tasted," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. Grandma Willow watched him eat, a strange warmth spreading through her. His gratitude was palpable, radiating from him like heat from a stove. She hadn't felt this useful in a long time. "What's your name?" she asked, settling into the chair opposite him. He swallowed the last bite of pie. "Silas, ma'am." "Silas Blackwood." "Willow," she replied. "Willow Peterson." He offered a small, hesitant smile. "Thank you, Mrs. Peterson. For everything." The last slice. The spicy aroma of cinnamon lingered, a phantom echo of the vanished pie. Grandma Willow observed Silas meticulously savor the final morsel, his eyes shut in quiet bliss. His gaunt features were accentuated by the afternoon's slant of light, he seemed a disoriented fledgling seeking refuge. Her gaze drifted to the now empty cooling rack. Just crumbs remained where, an hour prior, the pie had rested. She'd foregone baking for an age, not since, before the silence had consumed everything. It had been their shared solace, a ritual against the world's harshness. Now, it felt like a painful reminder of irrevocable loss. But Silas devoured the pie with a fervor hinting at deprivation, and watching him, a flicker of warmth ignited within her, a tiny ember in the protracted bleakness. She recalled another time, years prior, when drought had plundered their livelihood, nearly extinguishing their will to persevere. A neighbor, equally impoverished, had shared his last crust of bread. That simple act, a lifeline thrown in a tempest, had reminded them of humanity's enduring spirit. Grandma Willow exhaled softly, her breath a mere whisper against the grandfather clock's rhythmic pulse. She ambled toward the counter, methodically wiping it clean with a damp cloth. One slice remained. The final indulgence, reserved for herself in anticipation of more solitary days. An internal conflict arose. The ingrained prudence of hard times fought against a nascent generosity. That slice embodied resilience, self-reliance, survival. To relinquish it felt akin to forfeiting a part of her own being. But then she saw Silas, absorbed in sketching on a napkin with a worn-down pencil, his brow creased in concentration. A spark of passion glowed in his features, resisting the smothering weight of exhaustion. It evoked a poignant memory of John, immersed in creation in his workshop, oblivious to the world around him. Her resolution hardened. "Mr. Silas," she began, her voice betraying a slight tremor. He looked up, startled, a guarded expression in his eyes. "There's a last piece of pie," she continued, summoning a genuine smile that banished the hollow mask she'd worn for months. "The very last one. I'd like you to have it." His eyes widened in surprise. He glanced at the empty rack, then back at her, his face a study in disbelief. "But I couldn't," he stammered, his voice rough-edged. "You baked it. It's yours." A soft, rusty chuckle escaped Grandma Willow. "Nonsense. I've had my fill. Besides," she added, a playful glint in her eyes, "a budding artist requires proper fuel, doesn't he?" Silas hesitated, his gaze glued to the countertop. He looked as if kindness had become a distant memory. Finally, he offered a tentative nod. "If you're certain," he murmured, scarcely audible. Grandma Willow carefully sliced the last piece, arranging it on a delicate china plate adorned with floral motifs. She carried it to the table, placing it before him with a warm smile. "Enjoy," she said, retreating to the sink and feigning absorption in washing the few dishes. From the periphery of her vision, she watched him lift his fork. He took a small bite, his eyes closing once more, a sigh escaping his lips. This time, his expression transcended gratitude, hinting at something deeper, a semblance of peace. Grandma Willow turned back to the sink, a solitary tear trickling down her weathered cheek. But it wasn't a tear of sorrow. It was something akin to hope. Perhaps she hadn't sacrificed a piece of herself after all. Perhaps she had, instead, relinquished a sliver of her grief. A promise of repayment. Silas cradled the wedge of pie like a shard of captured moonlight. Not driven by ravenous hunger, he paused, lifting it towards his face, breathing in the scent. The aroma sparked something beyond mere appetite, a distant echo of a cherished memory. Grandma Willow, watching from her chair, kept her hands folded. The quiet air hummed only with the grandfather clock's measured pulse. She wondered what ghosts that unassuming dessert had stirred in him. A past mistake? A yearning? Or simply the unadulterated bliss of a simple pleasure? He took a tentative taste, a delicate exploration with his lips. A gentle smile softened his features. Each chew was a deliberate act of savoring, far beyond simple sustenance, a full immersion in sensation. He closed his eyes once more, lost in the dance of cinnamon and apple, the buttery caress of the crust. "Ma'am," he murmured, his voice a gravelly rasp that barely ruffled the stillness, then swallowed. This is the finest thing I've tasted in years." Grandma Willow only inclined her head, a sudden tightness in her throat preventing speech. He finished the slice with a quiet reverence, each bite a silent communion. Done, he brushed his mouth with a calloused hand and met her gaze, his eyes holding an emotion she struggled to define. Gratitude was there, undoubtedly, yet mingled with a quiet dignity that contrasted sharply with his worn clothes and gaunt face. "Thank you," he uttered, the words thick with heartfelt emotion. "More than words can express." He shifted, his gaze falling to his scuffed boots. My life wasn't always like this, you understand." This, reduced. He hesitated, seeming to gather himself. I was a carpenter, once. Skilled, I believe. I crafted furniture, tables, chairs, cabinets. Things meant to endure, things people valued. His voice cracked on the last word, betraying a deeper pain. Grandma Willow remained silent, letting him find his release in words. She sensed his need to offload his burdens, to speak his past, to remind himself he was more than just an empty stomach. Lost everything, he whispered, barely audible. Workshop, tools, home, all gone. The fire, it consumed it all. He offered no further details, yet the flicker of agony in his eyes spoke volumes of the grief within. He looked up, his gaze earnest and direct. I possess little of value now, but I promise you, I will find a way to repay your kindness. I don't know how or when, but I will. My word is my bond. He rose to his feet, his movements a little stiff. From his pocket, he produced a small, polished stone. It appeared unremarkable at first, a simple gray pebble, but as he turned it in his palm, Grandma Willow perceived faint veins of color within, hints of ochre and russet. Found it by the river, he explained, offering it to her. It's a meager thing, but it put me in mind of the shades in your garden. Please, accept it. A token of my gratitude. Grandma Willow hesitated, then accepted the stone. Cool and smooth against her skin, it was a small, tangible promise. Thank you, Silas, she replied, using his given name for the first time. I appreciate the thought. He nodded, a hesitant smile reappearing. I should be going. Wouldn't want to overstay my welcome. He turned toward the door, then paused. The pie, it rekindled something in me. Thank you for that. Then he departed, leaving Grandma Willow in the kitchen, the small stone a warm presence in her hand. The clock ticked louder in the quiet, a steady rhythm that whispered of time's passage and the possibilities it held. She studied the stone, then glanced out the window at her garden, bathed in the dimming light. A lone, delicate bloom swayed gently in the breeze, a burst of vitality against the encroaching gloom. And for the first time in a long while, Grandma Willow felt a spark bloom within her own spirit, a tiny ember refusing to fade. The lonely weeks. The polished stone sat on the windowsill above the sink, catching the morning light. Grandma Willow would glance at it while washing dishes, its smooth surface a cool contrast to the warm, soapy water. It was a tangible reminder of Mr. Silas, of his quiet gratitude and the flicker of something, hopeful, perhaps, in his eyes. But the weeks that followed settled into a familiar rhythm of solitude. The garden, usually a vibrant tapestry of color, felt muted, even with the late summer blooms stubbornly pushing their way towards the sun. She knelt amongst the tomato plants, pinching off suckers, the earthy smell clinging to her fingers. Grandpa Joe had always taken charge of the tomatoes, coaxing them into plump, juicy perfection. She could almost hear his booming laughter as he chased away the squirrels with a rusty garden hose. Now, the squirrels feasted freely, their cheeky eyes daring her to intervene. Inside, the house sighed and creaked, a chorus of settling wood and aging plaster. It was a sound she'd grown accustomed to, but lately, it seemed louder, more pronounced, a constant echo of her solitude. The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed each hour, each chime a hammer blow against the silence. She tried to fill her days. Baking, of course, but the pies lacked a certain zest. She read, but the words blurred on the page, her mind wandering. She knitted, the rhythmic click of the needles a poor substitute for conversation. Evenings were the hardest. Dusk painted the sky in shades of orange and purple, a breathtaking spectacle that only amplified her loneliness. The empty chair across from her in the living room seemed to loom larger in the fading light. Grandpa Joe's chair. The one he'd always claimed was perfectly molded to his backside. She'd tried moving it, storing it away in the attic, but the empty space it left felt even more profound. So, she'd returned it to its rightful place, a silent monument to their shared life. One evening, while shelling peas on the porch, she saw a familiar figure in the distance. A man, tall and lean, walking with a slight stoop. Her heart quickened, a hesitant flutter of anticipation. But as he drew closer, she realized it wasn't Mr. Silas. Just a stranger passing through. The disappointment was a sharp, unexpected pang. She hadn't realized how much she'd hoped to see him again. Not because she needed anything, but because his visit had stirred something within her, a feeling she hadn't experienced in a long time. A feeling of connection, of purpose. She finished shelling the peas, the rhythmic snap, 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 a counterpoint to the growing unease in her heart. Had she imagined it all? The gratitude in his eyes, the promise in his words? Was he just another drifter, passing through, taking what he could get and moving on? She pushed the thought away, telling herself it didn't matter. She was fine. She had her garden, her house, her memories. But as she sat there, the evening deepening into night, the house creaking around her, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. Something more than just Joe. Something that Mr. Silas, in his brief visit, had unknowingly awakened. A wooden bird appears. The air was a damp blanket promising another oppressive day. Grandma Willow shuffled onto the porch, her worn slippers whispering secrets to the aged wood. She reached for the watering can, intending to breathe new life into her petunias, their bright hues a defiant stand against the monochrome landscape of her spirit. That's when she spotted it. A diminutive wooden bird, perched on the swing's edge, wings forever caught in mid-flight. No gaudy colors adorned it, nor elaborate carvings. Instead, spare, elegant lines hinted at a craftsman's dedication. It seemed incredibly fragile against the swing's sturdy frame. A tremor ran through Willow's hand as she lifted it. Nestled perfectly in her palm, it was slick and sun-warmed. A tightly folded scrap of paper lay beneath. Her breath hitched as clumsy fingers worked to unfold it. A small token of my gratitude. The script was unmistakable, that neat, barely tilted hand from the cherry pie receipt, a memory both faded and sharply present. Mr. Silas. A flush of warmth bloomed through her, dispelling the previous day's chill of misjudgment. He wasn't a phantom, a figment spun from loneliness. He was flesh and blood. And he remembered. She traced the bird's curved wing. The wood yielded slightly to her touch, almost breathing. How long had it taken him to draw out this form, this grace, from a simple hunk of wood? Had she crossed his mind as he worked? The thought brought color to her cheeks. She hadn't felt this, buoyant, in months. Not a grand declaration, but a delicate gesture that resonated profoundly. A quiet kindness that spoke volumes. She held the bird aloft, admiring the sun's dance across its surface. Imperfection dwelled there, subtle asymmetries that amplified its charm. Clearly handcrafted, imbued with human touch, not stamped out by cold machinery. A delicate cedar scent clung to it, an earthy comfort that conjured her late husband, Thomas. He'd loved woodworking, crafting furniture and toys for their grandchildren. A gentle pang of sadness surfaced, more fondness than despair. Willow tucked the note into her apron pocket and returned to her petunias. The watering can felt feather-light. As water showered the blooms, each droplet a miniature prism, she noticed a fresh bud unfurling, a vibrant splash of purple against the verdant leaves. Later, after breakfast, she nestled the wooden bird on the mantelpiece among Thomas's seashell collection. It looked perfectly at home, a silent guardian watching over the room. Throughout the day, she found her gaze drifting to it, a subtle smile gracing her lips. The bird offered tangible proof that she wasn't utterly alone. That kindness still existed, that someone had noticed, had cared enough to share a piece of themselves. As evening deepened, painting the room with elongated shadows, she picked up the bird once more. She turned it in her hands, savoring its smooth texture, tracing the delicate wing lines. She wondered about Mr. Silas. His daily life. His story. What hidden talents he possessed. A dormant impulse stirred within her, an urge she hadn't felt in years. She wanted to bake. Not from duty, not from habit, but from a genuine wellspring of desire. She yearned to fill the kitchen with the comforting fragrance of warm spices, to craft something delicious, and to share it. The cherry pie sprang to mind, the shared slice, the ephemeral connection they had forged. She knew precisely what she would bake. More carvings, more wonder. Dawn painted Willow's kitchen in strokes of apricot and rose. A wordless tune drifted from her lips as she drew back the curtains, a buoyancy returning to her step after months of shadow. Atop the windowsill, nestled amidst her geraniums, sat a squirrel. Not flesh and blood, but a miniature marvel of carved wood, tiny paws embracing a nut, its tail an elegant flourish. Willow caught her breath, a true smile bloomed on her face. This was more exquisitely rendered than the bird. The wood's grain mimicked a living pelt, each minuscule claw impeccably formed. Gingerly, she picked it up, enjoying the satiny feel of the polished surface. It seemed almost animate. Silas, she breathed, his name a whispered benediction. He was seeding her life with such unexpected delight. The squirrel joined the bird on the mantelpiece, a nascent wooden bestiary taking root. Throughout the day, Willow found her gaze constantly drawn to the mantel, each glance kindling a fresh spark of wonder. That evening, as twilight brushed the sky with lavender and ash, Willow decided to tidy the porch before retreating indoors. The front door swung open, nearly tripping her. A cat lay curled on the welcome mat. This carving possessed a different character. Larger, certainly, but also imbued with an air of serene contemplation. Though unpainted, the cat's eyes seemed to harbor ancient secrets. Its tail coiled gracefully around its paws, its head cocked as if attuned to whispers only the wind carried. Willow knelt, her fingers tracing the curve of its spine, the subtle articulation of its ear. Emotion surged through her, gratitude, awe, and a surprising sense of connection. She recognized the solitude reflected in the cat's posture, the quiet strength in its gaze. It was as though Silas had infused a fragment of his own spirit into the wood, echoing the shared isolation they both knew. With care, she lifted the figure. It possessed a comforting weight, substantial and solid. She carried it inside, a burgeoning warmth eclipsing the evening's chill. "He's remarkable," she murmured, placing the cat near the hearth. The firelight danced across its form, casting quicksilver shadows that gave the illusion of life. She settled into her rocking chair, captivated. Silas wasn't merely a craftsman, he was an artist, a sculptor wielding wood as his medium. A thought surfaced, insistent. She knew so little about him. What inner fire fueled his artistry? What lay behind the subtle melancholy she sensed beneath his reserved exterior? Was he, perhaps like herself, using creation to navigate the complexities of grief? She glanced at the clock. Too late for a call. But tomorrow, she would find a way to express her thanks more meaningfully. Not with a mere pie, nor a perfunctory "thank you," but with genuine appreciation for the joy and wonder he had rekindled within her. As sleep claimed her, she dreamed of forests populated by wooden beings, all born from Silas's imaginative hands. They cavorted beneath the moon's glow, their silent laughter echoing through the trees. And at the center stood Silas, a gentle smile illuminating his face, shaping new marvels into existence. The following morning, Willow awoke invigorated. She resolved to visit Silas, not as a neighbor with a culinary offering, but as one who deeply admired his craft and yearned to understand its origins. She would inquire about his wood, his tools, his creative process. She would listen, truly listen, to whatever he chose to reveal. She dressed thoughtfully, selecting a soft azure dress that evoked summer skies. She brewed a pot of her strongest coffee, pouring it into a thermos. Then, clutching a small sketchbook and a charcoal pencil, a long-ago whim now suddenly relevant, she walked to his door, ready to embark on a fresh chapter, guided by the wordless narratives of wooden creatures. Whispers in the town. Sunlight, bolder than memory allowed, spilled through Willow's kitchen pane, igniting the wooden fox perched there. It seemed to gleam conspiratorially. Her face softened with a genuine smile, lines radiating from eyes bright with nascent joy. She felt buoyant. A sudden rap at the screen door announced Maisie Peterson, her young neighbor. "Grandma Willow. Anybody home?" Willow beckoned her inside. A cascade of pigtails and uncontainable zest flooded the room as Maisie zoomed in, instantly captivated by the windowsill collection. "Whoa! What are all these?" She darted between the fox and the squirrel, fingertips tracing the polished wood. "Did you make them?" A chuckle escaped Willow. "No, dear. A friend." Maisie clutched the rabbit, holding it aloft. "He's seriously good. It looks so alive." "What's his name?" "Silas," Willow answered, warmth unfurling within her as she spoke. "He's a gifted man, indeed." The girl's curiosity was insatiable, a flurry of questions about Silas and his craftsmanship. Where had he learned his skill? What types of wood did he favor? Did he exhibit his work? Willow responded as best she could, her spirit lifting with both gratitude and a burgeoning sense of possibility. Later, while pruning her roses, Mrs. Gable from across the way paused for a chat. "Willow, those carvings in your window are simply enchanting. Where on earth did you find them?" "I've been searching for something unique for my granddaughter's birthday." The following day brought a chorus of similar inquiries. Mr. Henderson, the mail carrier, lingered at her porch, captivated by the sculpted figures. A fellow parishioner remarked on their beauty after Sunday service, her eyes sparkling with admiration. Each question, each compliment, resonated like a struck chord, awakening something within Willow. That evening, as fireflies painted the twilight with fleeting luminescence, Willow pondered Silas. A true artist, no doubt, yet one who seemed to shun the limelight. She recalled his humble attire, his diffident manner. It seemed unlikely he actively marketed his pieces. The realization sparked a feeling, a desire to reciprocate the joy he'd gifted her. An idea, fragile at first, steadily gained momentum. She could champion him. Her connections and familiarity with the town could be leveraged to find an audience for his carvings. It would provide an avenue for his artistic expression, a means of livelihood, and perhaps, gently coax him from his self-imposed seclusion. But how would he react? She perceived a quiet pride in him. Would he accept her proposition? And what if he preferred his creations remain private? Willow banished her apprehensions. There would be no pressure. She would simply extend the offer, delicately, and allow him to chart the course. Yet, the seed of the idea had taken root, demanding attention. It was an act of gratitude, a chance to pay forward kindness, a way to connect on a deeper level. The fireflies blinked in the deepening dusk, mirroring the nascent hope flickering within her. She decided to visit Silas tomorrow. She needed to gauge his perspective, his reservations. And perhaps, together, they could unlock a pathway to share his extraordinary artistry with a wider audience. Finding Mr. Silas. Willow felt a lightness she hadn't experienced in years. The idea of helping Silas, of returning even a fraction of the joy he'd unknowingly gifted her, propelled her forward. But first, she needed to find him. She started at the bakery, remembering he'd mentioned a fondness for their sourdough. Mrs. Peterson, flour dusting her apron like fresh snow, remembered him. "Oh, Mr. Silas," she said, wiping her hands. "Quiet gentleman. Comes in for a loaf most Tuesdays. Didn't see him this week, though." Willow thanked her and crossed the street to Mr. Abernathy's hardware store. He was behind the counter, meticulously sorting screws. "Silas? Tall fellow, always wears that faded blue jacket." Mr. Abernathy scratched his chin. "Bought some carving tools a while back. Said he liked working with cherry wood." Haven't seen him lately. Try the park, maybe? I think he mentioned carving there sometimes. The park. Of course. It felt right. A haven of green and quiet, just like Silas himself. A faint breeze rustled the leaves as Willow walked along the paved path. She scanned the benches, the flower beds, the small playground where children shrieked with laughter. No Silas. Disappointment pricked at her. Perhaps he wasn't around anymore. Maybe he'd moved on, found another town, another park. Then, she heard it. A soft, rhythmic tapping. It led her off the path, towards a cluster of ancient oak trees. And there he was. Silas sat on a fallen log, his faded blue jacket blending seamlessly with the shadows. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, dappling his hair with gold. His head was bent low, his brow furrowed in concentration. In his hands, a piece of wood was slowly transforming. Willow stopped, mesmerized. She didn't want to interrupt, to break the spell. He held a small, curved knife, its blade glinting in the light. With each deliberate stroke, tiny curls of wood peeled away, revealing the form hidden within. It was a bird, a wren perhaps, its delicate wings taking shape under his skillful hand. She watched, unnoticed, as his fingers danced across the wood. He coaxed the details into existence, the curve of the beak, the texture of the feathers, the tiny, bright eye. His movements were fluid, almost meditative. It wasn't just carving, it was a conversation between him and the wood. The air smelled of damp earth and freshly cut wood. A robin chirped nearby, its song echoing Silas's rhythmic tapping. He paused, tilting his head as if listening to the bird's melody. Then, he resumed carving, his knife moving with renewed purpose. Willow could see now the fine lines etched around his eyes, evidence of a life lived fully, a life etched with stories. They were kind eyes, she thought, even when focused intensely on his craft. She noticed, too, the calloused hands, strong and steady, capable of creating such beauty. He worked for a long time, lost in his own world. Finally, he stopped, setting the carving down on the log. He picked up a small brush and gently swept away the wood shavings, revealing the finished wren in all its glory. It was breathtaking. So full of life, so intricately detailed. He held it up, turning it in the light. A faint smile touched his lips. Then, he sighed, a sound that seemed to carry all the loneliness of the world. Willow knew she couldn't wait any longer. She stepped forward, her heart pounding in her chest. Mr. Silas? A partnership is born. Mr. Silas? Though gentle, Willow's voice pierced the tranquil murmur of the park. He jumped, the delicate carving nearly slipping from his grasp. His gaze lifted, surprise flitting across his features, quickly superseded by something akin to joy. Grandma Willow. What a delightful surprise. With care, he nestled the tiny wren onto a square of velvet cushioning the bench. Willow drew near, her gait more sprightly than it had been in months. Sunlight kissed the silver in her hair, creating a luminous aura. I was hoping to find you. She faltered, a sudden wave of self-consciousness washing over her. What if he misinterpreted her intentions? I wanted to reiterate my thanks for your kindness the other day. And, well, an idea occurred to me. Silas indicated the bench with a sweep of his hand. Please, have a seat. I was just pausing for a moment. Shaping these little creatures requires more focus than one anticipates. Willow settled beside him, careful to leave him ample space. The aroma of worked wood mingled with a clean, earthy scent that seemed to emanate from him. They're exquisite, Mr. Silas. Truly. Her fingers hovered over the wooden wren, its miniature, detailed feathers practically begging for a touch. A blush bloomed across his weathered cheeks. Thank you. It's a diversion. It occupies my hands. Willow turned the carving over, admiring the craftsmanship. Which sparked my thought. You see, my little bakery has grown beyond its name. Foot traffic is considerable, especially on weekends. And I have that empty display case, the one that once showcased elaborate cakes. Before, her voice trailed off, then she straightened her shoulders. What if I displayed your carvings at the bakery? We could offer them for sale, and divide the proceeds. Silas gaped at her, speechless. He blinked, then again, as if trying to clear his vision. Sell them? But, these are mere hobbies. Something I fashion for my own pleasure. He picked up another carving, a miniature wooden fox, curled in slumber. It never occurred to me anyone would purchase them. Nonsense. Willow countered, her tone ringing with newfound conviction. People will adore them. They're original, wonderfully wrought, and filled with heart, Mr. Silas. It's evident. Her gaze met his, earnest and bright. I honestly believe this could be successful. I have the venue, I have the patrons, and you possess the artistry. His eyes fell to his hands, gnarled and worn, then rose to the fox, finally meeting Willow's gaze once more. I'm at a loss for words. He appeared overwhelmed, caught between incredulity and nascent hope. Say yes, Willow coaxed softly. Agree to try. What harm could it do? He remained silent for a drawn-out moment, punctuated only by the soughing of leaves in the boughs overhead. Then, he met her gaze, his eyes suddenly crystalline. A genuine smile, etching fine lines at the corners of his eyes, illuminated his face. Very well, Grandma Willow. I'll agree. Willow's spirit lifted. She felt a buoyancy unknown since Arthur's passing. Splendid. Oh, Mr. Silas, this is simply splendid. An impulse to embrace him arose, but she checked herself. Instead, she extended her hand. He hesitated infinitesimally, then clasped it. His hand was warm and powerful, his grip firm yet gentle. A partnership, then? A partnership, Willow affirmed, squeezing his hand in return. A partnership forged over pie and wooden creatures. The sun seemed to gain brilliance, the birdsong a richer melody. In that instant, nestled in the heart of the park, a new chapter unfolded, not only for Willow and Silas, but for the small community they both cherished. And it all stemmed from a carving, an act of kindness, and the brave decision to reach out. The cozy shop. The next morning, sunlight streamed through Willow's lace curtains, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. Today, the living room wouldn't be a repository of memory, but a gallery of Silas's art. She hummed, a tune long unsung, as she cleared away the doilies and knickknacks, making space for the wooden wonders. When Silas arrived, his arms laden with carvings wrapped in old newspapers, his eyes widened. Willow, are you sure? This is a lot of space. Nonsense, she chirped, taking a delicately carved owl from him. It's perfect. Imagine, each piece has room to breathe, to tell its story. Together, they arranged the carvings. Silas, initially hesitant, soon found himself caught up in the process, his face alight with a joy Willow hadn't seen before. The leaping deer found its place on the mantelpiece, its antlers catching the light. A family of squirrels nestled on a bookshelf, their tiny eyes seeming to twinkle. A majestic eagle, wings outstretched, perched on a small table near the window, commanding attention. As they worked, a gentle knock echoed through the house. It was Maisie Peterson, her face beaming. Grandma Willow, I saw Mr. Silas carrying all those beautiful things. Can I help? Willow, delighted, welcomed her in. Maisie, you're a lifesaver. We need to make this place feel welcoming. Maisie, with the enthusiasm of youth, suggested adding fairy lights, draping them artfully around the window frame. She brought in a small rug from her own home, its vibrant colors adding warmth to the room. Willow, inspired, pulled out a vase and filled it with freshly cut daffodils from her garden, their sunny faces mirroring her own. By late afternoon, the living room had been transformed. It was no longer just a room, it was a cozy shop, filled with the scent of wood and flowers, and the soft glow of fairy lights. Silas stood back, his eyes brimming with emotion. I don't know what to say, Willow. It's more beautiful than I ever imagined. Nonsense, Willow chuckled, patting his arm. You deserve all the beauty in the world, Silas. The first customers arrived just as the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the lawn. 2 women, neighbors from down the street, had seen the lights and the open sign Willow had propped up in the window. They gasped as they stepped inside, their eyes wide with wonder. "Oh, my goodness," one of them breathed, running her hand over the smooth surface of a carved bird. "These are exquisite. Who made them?" Willow beamed, stepping forward. "My dear friend, Mr. Silas, is the artist. He's incredibly talented, isn't he?" Silas, usually withdrawn, stood a little straighter, a hint of pride in his eyes. He answered their questions about the wood he used, the techniques he employed, his voice gaining confidence with each word. Maisie, ever the helpful one, offered them tea and cookies, creating a warm and inviting atmosphere. The women lingered, admiring each piece, their voices hushed with reverence. One of them purchased the carved bird, the other, a small wooden heart. As they left, their faces glowing with happiness, Willow turned to Silas, her heart swelling with joy. "See? They love your work, Silas. They truly do." Silas, overwhelmed, could only nod, his throat tight with emotion. The cozy shop, born from grief and loneliness, had become a beacon of hope, a testament to the power of friendship and the beauty of art. The space felt full, not just with carvings, but with potential, with the promise of a future brighter than either of them had dared to imagine. The hum of the evening settled around them, carrying the scent of daffodils and the quiet murmur of possibility. Friendship and laughter. The aroma of sawdust mingled with Willow's freshly baked apple pie, creating a surprisingly pleasant and homey scent that permeated the house. Silas, perched on the edge of the floral armchair, a mug of tea warming his hands, was regaling Willow with a tale from his childhood. "So, there I was, maybe 10 years old, convinced I could build a raft and sail it down the creek to the Mississippi," he chuckled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Used old doors, I did, and rope pilfered from my pa's shed. You can imagine how that went." Willow leaned forward, her own laughter bubbling up. "Let me guess, a spectacular sinking?" "Spectacular is an understatement," Silas admitted, shaking his head. "Sank faster than a stone. Had to wade back, covered in mud and creek weed, with a very unhappy snapping turtle nipping at my heels. Pa wasn't impressed, to say the least." Willow's laughter filled the room, a warm, comforting sound that chased away the lingering shadows of grief. It had been so long since she'd laughed like this, truly laughed, from the belly. She countered with a story of her own, about a disastrous attempt to dye her hair green in her youth, a mishap that resulted in a very angry mother and a week spent hiding under a bonnet. The hours melted away, filled with shared memories, silly jokes, and comfortable silences. They discovered a mutual fondness for old movies and a shared dislike for overly salted popcorn. Silas learned about Willow's passion for gardening, her prize-winning roses, and her secret recipe for rhubarb jam. Willow, in turn, learned about Silas's love for nature, his quiet observations of the world around him, and the stories he saw hidden within the wood. As the days turned into weeks, their friendship deepened. Silas arrived each morning, not just to carve, but to share a cup of tea and a conversation. He helped Willow with small tasks around the house, fixing a leaky faucet, mending a broken fence post. Willow, in turn, offered him her comforting presence, a listening ear, and a steady supply of baked goods. The gallery in Willow's living room thrived. Maisie's colorful signs drew in curious passers-by, and the unique beauty of Silas's carving spoke for themselves. People were drawn not only to the artistry, but also to the story behind the artist. They sensed the quiet strength and resilience that had shaped Silas's hands, the same qualities they admired in Willow. One afternoon, a woman purchased a carving of a soaring eagle, its wings outstretched in a gesture of freedom. As she paid, she remarked, "You can see the love in it. The love and the hope." Silas, standing beside Willow, felt a warmth spread through his chest. He glanced at Willow, her eyes sparkling with pride, and a lump formed in his throat. He had almost forgotten the joy of creating, the satisfaction of sharing his art with the world. Later that evening, after the last customer had left and Maisie had packed up her paints, Silas sat with Willow, the setting sun casting long shadows across the room. "Willow," he began, his voice thick with emotion, "I don't know how to thank you. For everything. For believing in me when I didn't believe in myself." Willow reached out and gently squeezed his hand. "Don't be silly, Silas. You're a talented man. All I did was give you a little nudge." "More than a nudge," he insisted, shaking his head. "You brought me back to life." He paused, then added, "About this partnership. I'm in. Wholeheartedly." Willow beamed. "Wonderful. We'll make a great team, you and I." They spent the rest of the evening discussing plans, ideas bubbling forth like champagne. They talked about expanding their offerings, perhaps adding small wooden toys or decorative items. They even considered teaching carving classes to children in the community. As Silas prepared to leave, he turned to Willow, a genuine smile illuminating his face. "You know," he said, "this house, it feels like a home again. Thanks to you." Willow smiled back, her heart overflowing with warmth. "It's good to have it filled with friendship and laughter again, Silas. It's good to have you here. A pie of kindness." The transformed living room hummed with a vibrant energy, a sensation that resonated far deeper than the sun's golden rays painting the walls. Silas, engrossed, demonstrated the finer points of a hummingbird carving to Mrs. Gable, its delicate beak seemingly frozen in the act of sipping from a minute blossom. Across the room, young Timmy Henderson, wide-eyed with wonder, bombarded Mr. Peterson with inquiries about a stately stag, its rack of antlers rendered with breathtaking precision. It felt worlds away from the echoing silence that had pervaded the house mere weeks prior, a stark contrast to the dust motes that had danced in listless shafts of sunlight, failing to penetrate the gloom within her. A soft laugh escaped Willow, surprising even her. All of this, springing from a single pie. She recalled Silas's arrival on her porch that day, his posture defeated, his gaze burdened with a sorrow mirroring her own. Utterly worn, a man stripped bare by grief. Offering him the last slice of apple pie, still radiating warmth from the oven, had been an impulsive gesture, a desperate attempt to soothe a hollow ache. "Just a piece," she'd murmured, awkwardly presenting the plate, "to sustain you." She hadn't anticipated the ensuing heart-to-heart, the unfolding of shared vulnerabilities, the tender understanding that had taken root amidst the scent of warm apples and spice. Least of all, this, a lively haven of creativity and camaraderie, echoing with laughter and the satisfying rustle of transactions. Willow delicately adjusted a display of Silas's smaller pieces, playful squirrels clinging to walnuts, fragile butterflies with wings outstretched in eternal flight. She thought of the fragile hope that had sparked in Silas's eyes when she proposed their collaboration, the slight tremor in his weathered hand as he'd clasped hers. He'd teetered on the precipice of despair, on the verge of allowing his talent to wither and fade. "Rediscover your joy, Silas," she'd encouraged. "Let these carvings breathe life back into you." And he had. The transformation was undeniable. The shadows beneath his eyes had begun to recede, replaced by a glimmer of fervor. His bearing had straightened, his steps infused with newfound direction. He was sculpting once more, driven not by necessity, but by passion. She could almost feel Joe's presence beside her, a comforting hand upon her shoulder. He would have reveled in this scene, loved seeing her enlivened by company, her home brimming with vitality. He always said she possessed a gift for uniting people, for uncovering the inherent goodness in everyone. A solitary tear traced a path down her cheek, yet it wasn't born of sadness. It was a testament to gratitude, to fulfillment. Quickly, she brushed it away, avoiding attention. Mr. Peterson, the retired academic, now meticulously scrutinized a small wooden owl, rotating it in his grasp, his brow furrowed in concentration. The detail, he mused, is simply astounding. One can practically hear its nocturnal call. Silas, overhearing, glowed. I strive to capture the spirit of the creature, he responded, his voice imbued with quiet pride. To infuse a fragment of vitality into the wood. Willow observed them, her heart swelling. It transcended mere carvings, it was about the bonds taking shape, the narratives unfolding, the happiness spreading outwards. It was about transmuting solitude into fellowship, despair into optimism. She drifted towards the kitchen, the familiar groan of the floorboards a comforting refrain. A fresh batch of cookies baked within the oven, oatmeal raisin, Joe's preferred indulgence. She'd prepared them that morning, thinking of him, of the countless moments they'd savored coffee and a sweet treat at that very table. Willow, my dear, Mrs. Gable exclaimed, this hummingbird is utterly divine. I must possess it. Willow smiled warmly. Silas pours his very soul into each creation, she replied. As she drew the golden cookies from the oven, their comforting scent permeating the air, she understood this was merely the genesis. The pie had been the catalyst, the spark that ignited a beacon of hope and connection. Yet it was the benevolence, the shared human frailty, the willingness to extend oneself and offer a piece of her own heart, that had truly wrought this transformation. And she knew, with unwavering conviction, that Joe would be radiating pride.